Okay.
But yeah, to be able to evaluate whether or not where they're getting the information from is a valuable place to get it from, and is it actually reliable or not?
I want them to be able to independently solve problems. So I think that's a big one, and having them look at what matters to us, and then not just have somebody tell them what to do, but to kind of feel it out for themselves, how to solve it.
I'd have to say that I would like them to be inquisitive, I want them to be curious, and I want them to be problem solvers, and I want them to be fearless.
So say more about fearless.
I think we avoid big topics like the trafficking, and these are things that really need to be brought to the table, that they're open and able to talk freely about, and not to avoid those issues that are big topics within our school.
I'd like them to be able to answer their own question. When are we ever going to need this in the real world?
It's a great question.
I want mine to develop a cultural perspective, a cultural lens to understand that it's not just their world, it's to open up their world so they can look around them more and not just be contained within what they see day by day by day. I want them to understand they're citizens of the world, not just where they're at.
And along that same vein, I want mine to be able to interact with each other in a positive manner, to be able to like walk up to somebody and be open to the differences between the two.
Maybe along those lines, identifying some kind of problem in the community, but then feeling like there are steps that they can take to make some sort of difference or some sort of impact on it, I think is a valuable lesson for them.
I'm kind of in the middle of my project, and just last week the kids were researching. I'm doing human trafficking, and the kids were researching. And I had a student. I came around the corner, and he's looking at pictures, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And here he's like, "Oh, see, I was reading this article, and it said that he was sitting at a loom all the time, and so I didn't know what that was, so I had to go and look." And I was like, yes. So he felt confident to go and do that, and then he brought in an article yesterday that he saw over the weekend about human trafficking. So, yes.
I think it's great to have students feel safe, and having these outside resources, making those connections that they're not alone.
I think someone said about, I think you said about to never have to answer when are we going to use this. A lot of the stuff that we teach out of a textbook or whatever, they learn and maybe they're not sure why, but if there's some sort of project or some sort of goal or problem for them to solve, that's the application. And then the content or the theory or the skill, or if it's written a letter or whatever it might be, is what then they have to go and use to solve the problem. So it's kind of looking at it backwards. And I think it's probably more motivating for the kids. Why are we learning this? Well, we're learning it to solve problem X.
One of the things that my kids did with their research, they were looking at legislative areas with human trafficking. And so they were truly looking up what laws were on the books, and they had some good questions that came out of it that they're still researching. So it's certainly, a real world thing.
Yeah.
I think encouraging the importance of the dialogue that takes place in this community idea of service learning with the students, everybody plays a part. And it begins with an idea, and then it becomes contagious. And the momentum just really is so contagious that if I'm the artist, I do the backdrop, and then you're going to be the spokesperson, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and it just percolates. And you see that in a really well-run classroom where I'm just not the teacher. We all have a part. It's an orchestra, big crescendo, and then it's a big celebration.
I had a conversation with one of my students' parents last week. I was doing a positive phone call home, and I was talking with her, and she said she was really excited about the research project, and she had gone home and spoken about it, and this is a student who never talks about schoolwork at home. So.
Will they, or?
Mine connects wholly with my cultural standards. I mean, it's most of 2 standards that it's going to be touching. Things like they have to work with authentic resources, so I'm hoping to be able to use some of their Spanish to look up some of the information on a newspaper from Spain or a newspaper from Nicaragua, and teaching them how to be able to access information at a very basic level, being able to interpret that, being able to understand how people look at people from the U.S. from the outside. That's right along my standards. And it also touches the IST technology standards, where you're getting kids to create with technology, getting your kids to be digital citizens. And there are several things in that it also connects to.
Informational text, speaking and listening standards, and writing standards straight across, as well as I also teach 8th grade social studies. And so, there's your legal system and how everything is organized.
Just whispering about the listening and speaking.
Yeah.
That we tend to forget that that's one of our standards, that this is right there. And when the kids get older, they need to be able to do that. And they need to be able to advocate for themselves now.
I think as the art teacher, reaching the standards is entirely intentional because we're constantly being asked to prove our relevance to the rest of the curriculum. So not only do we hit art standards, but in this project, but in also all other projects, we usually cover social studies, math. But the beauty of students leading the research is that some of those are unintentional connections. So I have one group that's helping us to connect a little bit to science, where I wouldn't have taken us there, but like students are sometimes making those connections as well.
I think it allows us to break down the walls of our classroom, where you can delve outside and bring things in. Just bringing outside in, being a fine arts educator, going out, going to a museum, going to the North Market, these experiences, going to the orchestra. They have not had these experiences, and exposing them to be a part of something that they've never experienced before. I think our greatest strength is the students within each and every building.
I have looked at this project, the Placera project, several times and never felt like I had a really good framework to make it happen. And with this training, I'm kind of excited because for me, it's helped me focus it more, being able to figure out roles, how to make it more real to the kids. I've played all around the different edges of what I'm doing now, but now I feel like I have a plan that I can put together and actually do what I want to do. Before, I felt like I was just kind of struggling because I didn't know how to make it happen.
What I've enjoyed, because I work with Don Rondo, is that we're able to execute something and team teach and work together and collaborate and talk to each other and visit each other and have lunch together. I'm like, that's never happened in my 28 years, When I was at Fort Hays, that happened frequently, but we really closed the door and shut ourselves in.
Because we're all, the 4 of us from Wilbur Park are in different subject areas, different grade levels, different. So we were trying to force a project that all 4 of us could do rather than let the students. So it's been a learning process for us, just in that we've had to learn that her project doesn't have to be what mine does, but we can feed off of each other for the greater good.
I also think there's a challenge in how colleagues look at you sometimes, because we had a teacher in our building who did a lot of service learning, and there were a lot of things that were said about her that weren't kind, and she did some really phenomenal work. So I don't know how to bridge those doors sometimes of how others think of what you're doing. And sometimes I don't care, but sometimes I really do care because I do work with these people, and I want to share the excitement, but that's a challenge sometimes.
I think with teaching, we all enjoy teaching. That's why we went into it. But I'd have to say we're exceptionally zealous about this project. And we're making those connections with our students because we're getting to know them in a different form that we've never had before. And they're giving back and just getting to know your students. And all these projects just feed that fire.
They're just going through the motions because in their mind that self-definition doesn't include that. But to find ways to pull out, well, what talent do you have? What can you contribute? And how can we use your skills and your ability to better our project? Hopefully, will give them a little bit of that self-confidence, and that will impact the rest of their school day and their learning.
I think what's also exciting is that it's not a drive-through. You know, you order here, pick up here. I enjoy the process, you know, and then maybe the product, but the process and just stretching it out, you know, and just extracting everything that you can to get to that maybe final point, or it's a work in progress, which is a little dribble, you know. I think it's, we have access to a lot of things, and it's right out there, it's everywhere. It's not always important to be in the driver's seat, you know, take the back seat. This has helped me be reflective in my teaching and to be a kid again, like I'm a student all over again, and to be the teacher and just really get some good dialogue going on with the students. And you know, they're teaching, I'm sitting down, I'm playing with them. It's good to have that play. And it's not just a regurgitation, yes, no, here. And art, it's very subjective, but I've been able to gather a lot of information in a short amount of time through the service learning.